Sarx is the Greek word for flesh. It's the flesh. And so we could be talking about two kinds of flesh. We could be talking about the flesh that you could touch and that you could feel. But sarx in a spiritual sense, as it is used in places like Romans chapter 8, those who are in the flesh, Romans chapter 8, verses 8, those who are in the flesh cannot please God. That is flesh in a spiritual sense. That is flesh in terms of sinful activity. Those who are in the flesh cannot please God. It is what the Apostle Paul means in Romans chapter 7. Romans chapter 7, and listen to what Paul says. Romans chapter 7, beginning in verse number 14. A passage that we read several times, but we'll just go back and read it. Romans chapter 7, verse 14. Romans chapter 7, verse 14. Notice what the Word of God says. We'll put a little meat on this skeleton. Romans chapter 7, beginning in verse 14. Paul says, "For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am of flesh, sold into bondage to sin. For what I am doing I do not understand, for I am not practicing what I would like to do, but I am doing the very thing I hate. But if I do the very thing I do not want to do, I agree with the law, confessing that the law is good. So now no longer am I the one doing it, but sin which dwells in me." And we noted that this is where we get this concept of indwelling sin. We get the concept of indwelling sin from this particular passage. Owen breaks down the doctrine of indwelling sin utilizing this passage, sin that dwells in me. Verse number 18, "For I know," listen to what Paul says here, "for I know that nothing good dwells in me." You see that? Nothing good dwells in me. Then what does he say? He gives an appositional statement here, saying what? That is in my flesh. That is in my flesh. But does he mean the physical flesh? No. No, he doesn't mean the physical flesh. He's not talking about this thing that you can touch. He's talking about this inward nature, this fight that we have, the battle between the flesh and the spirit. And he says, look, in my flesh, there dwells no good thing. And then he says, "For the willing is present in me, but the doing of the good is not." But the doing of the good is not. So on page 58, John Owen gives us this quote. John Owen says, indwelling sin, top of page 58, indwelling sin